Today we are going to learn about how to use a singleton pattern to working with Volley. If your application made a continuous use of network, then it is better to create an instance of RequestQue that lasts as lifetime of your app. So now we are going to learn how to create an instance of RequestQue that lasts as lifetime by using the singleton pattern. So here is the application. Here is a text view and button. If the user click the button, this application gets some data from a remote server and display the data using this text view. So here I use a local host, and here we have a simple PHP script available inside the root folder of the local host. So this PHP script return a simple message. So now we are going to get this message and display this message using this text view. And here we are going to use a singleton pattern to create an instance of RequestQue. So the first thing, you need to add the needed permission inside your manifest file. So here I already add the needed permission. You need to add the internet permission, and to use the Volley library you need to add the needed dependency inside your Gradle script file. Here is the dependency for the Volley. Okay. Now first here I am going to create a new Java class for the singleton pattern. So right click the package and create a new Java class. Specify a class name. I name it as my singleton. So now here I'm going to create some variables. Private static my singleton m instance. Create an instance of the my singleton class. Now create another variable for RequestQue. Name it as RequestQue. Now we need some context variable. Private static context. I name it as mctx. So the key concept is that you have to use the get application context for initializing the RequestQue. So if you use the get application context, this will make sure that that particular instance lasts as lifetime of your application. So that is the key concept. Okay. So now I'm going to create some methods. Create a method for getting the RequestQue. So public, here the return IP is RequestQue, and specify method name get RequestQue. There is no arguments for this method. So first here check if the RequestQue instance is already available or not. If RequestQue is null, in that case we have to initialize the RequestQue. So RequestQue equal to volley dot new RequestQue and specify the context. So here be careful, you have to use the get application context. This will make sure that this particular instance lasts us throughout the lifetime of your app. And finally return that RequestQue. Okay. And now create a constructor for this class. Private my singleton. And for this constructor we need a context argument. I name it as context. First I'm going to initialize the context variable mctx equal to context. Now call the method getRequestQue from this constructor. So RequestQue equal to call the method called getRequestQue. Okay. Now here I am going to create another method for get an instance of this class. So create another method, public static method, and we have to synchronize that method, public static synchronized, and this method return an instance of this class. So return type is my singleton, and the method name is get instance. This method also need an argument. It is an object of context class. Okay, so here first we have to check if the instance is already existing or not. If m instance equal to null, in that case we have to initialize the instance of this class. So m instance equal to new my singleton and pass the context, and finally return that particular instance, return m instance. Okay, now we need to create another method for add a request to the request queue. So here I am going to create another method for adding the request, public void add it to request queue, and this method contain one argument, contain request. Okay, and finally from this method we have to add each of these requests to the request queue. So request queue dot add okay. So now the singleton class is ready. Okay, now go to main activity.java. On the main layout we have a text view and button. So when user click the button, we have to fetch information from the server and display the response using this text view. So open main activity.java. First create some variables. I name it as button. Now we need a text view. I name it as text view. And now we need a server URL. String server URL. So now here I am going to use a Genymotion virtual device. So we need to find out the IP. So type ipconfig inside your command prompt. So here it is 192.168.56.1. So http colon specify the IP 192.168.56.1. Now specify the PHP script file name. Here it is greetings.php. Okay, now we can initialize these variables. First one is button. Typecast that one into button. Now find it. Find view by id r.id dot. It is bn. Now the text view. So text view equal to typecast that one into text view. Now find it. find the view by itr.id.txt. So now create some click listener for this button. So button dot set on click listener. Okay. So here we have to get some string from the server. So we have to use a string request. So here we have to create some string request. String request equal to new string request. First argument is the request method. So request dot method dot here we use the post method. Now specify the server URL. Now you have to specify a listener for getting the response from server. So now we have the onResponse method. Now we have to specify a listener for the error listener. Okay. So we get the response on this method called onResponse, and if there is some error happens, we get that one inside the onErrorResponse method. So now we are going to show the response using the text view. So text view dot set to text and display the response using the text view, and if there is an error happens, in that case we have to display the error text view dot set text. Error. And finally print the error stack trace. Print stack trace. Okay. So now the string request is ready. Now we need to add this string request to the request queue. So here we create an instance of the request queue by using the singleton pattern. So my singleton pattern, my singleton dot get instance. So pass the get application context. Now call the add to request queue method and pass the string request. That's it. Okay. So now the application is ready. Now we can test it. Run the application. Select a virtual device. Okay, now the application available on this virtual device. So now we are going to get the data from server. So click the button. Here is the response from server. So this is how we using a singleton pattern to get an instance of RequestQue. I hope you understand the concepts. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.